Hello, patriots, praying citizens, and truth seekers. Today is Wednesday, May 22nd. There was quite a bit of activity on Capitol Hill and at the White House. The president, ever the master of the art of the deal, is trolling the Democrats, and they are looking really bad right now. But until they get their act together, we can forget health care, we can forget the border, because the Dems only want the I word. So let's take a look at exactly what happened today. We'll start with verbal shots being fired. Number one, early this morning, the Democrats held a meeting to discuss the I word, apparently. However, Nancy Pelosi said they were just talking about things pertaining to the progress that they're making as a caucus. Then next, Nancy Pelosi held a press conference explaining those things and then dropping a bomb by saying the president engaged in a cover-up. After that, the president sat down with Democrats to discuss infrastructure. This is a meeting that had been planned 3 weeks ago. He then reacted to Pelosi's comment and said he doesn't think that they want to do business. So he ended the meeting abruptly and went to the Rose Garden to give an impromptu address regarding the Mueller investigation, the exoneration, and the Democrats' bad behavior. Nancy Pelosi responded to him with another address to the press, flanked by all of her fellows from the Democrat Party, indicating the president was unwilling to move forward with infrastructure because Democrats refused to sign the USMCA, which is the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement on Trade. Then she said, "He just took a pass. Anyway, I pray for the president." Well, we wonder, Nancy, just who you're praying to. So let's talk about the president engaging in a cover-up, and we'll hear those words from the horse's mouth. Pardon the pun.
It was a very positive meeting, a respectful sharing of ideas, and I think a very impressive presentation by our chairs. We do believe that it's important to follow the facts. We believe that no one is above the law, including the President of the United States, and we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up, and that was the nature of the meeting.
So next we move to a little bit of information about the meeting that the president had with the Democrats. There were no cameras, there were no reporters, but this is what was in the New York Times. During his meeting with the Democrats, Trump did not sit down or shake anyone's hand. He looked at them and said, "Once your investigation is done, we can talk about these things." And then he left the room before anyone else could speak. Someone who goes unnamed reportedly said that the president told them, "I came to this meeting ready to work on a deal for infrastructure, but all you want to do is investigate me. You accuse me of a cover-up, and unless you go down a different road, we have nothing to talk about." He explained it later this evening. This was a tweet from 9:28 p.m. In a letter to her House colleagues, Nancy Pelosi said, "President Trump had a temper tantrum for us all to see. This is not true. I was purposely very polite and calm, much as I was minutes later with the press in the Rose Garden. Can be easily proven. It's all such a lie." So now let's hear the president's speech.
The economy, with jobs, with the most people employed today that we've ever had in the history of our country. We have the best unemployment numbers that we've had in the history of our country. In some cases, 51 years, but generally in the history of our country. Companies are moving back in. Things are going well. And I said, let's have the meeting on infrastructure. We'll get that done easily. That's one of the easy ones. And instead of walking in happily into a meeting, I walk in to look at people that had just said that I was doing a cover-up. I don't do cover-ups. You people know that probably better than anybody. And I was just looking at a list of some of the things that we just did. More than 2,500 subpoenas qualified for. And I let everybody talk. I let the White House counsel speak for 30 hours. 30 hours. I have 19 special counsel lawyers, 40 FBI agents. I said, open it all up. Let them have whatever they want. Nearly 500 search warrants. Think of that, a search warrant. Did you ever see a search warrant before? Neither did I. This was over 500 search warrants. And of the 19 people that were heading up this investigation, or whatever you want to call it, with Bob Mueller, they were contributors to the Democrat Party, most of them, and to Hillary Clinton. They hated President Trump. They hated him with a passion. They went to her big party after the election that turned out to be a wake. Not a party, it was a wake. And they were very angry. These are the people that after 2 years and $40 million or $35 million, it'll end up being a lot more than that by the time all the bills are paid. This is what happened. No collusion, no obstruction, no nothing. They issued 50 orders authorizing use of pen registers. Think of that, though. 500 witnesses. And then I have Nancy Pelosi go out and say that the President of the United States engaged in a cover-up. Now, we've had a House investigation. We have Senate investigations. We have investigations like nobody's ever had before, and we did nothing wrong. They would have loved to have said we colluded. They would have loved it. These people were out to get us. The Republican Party and President Trump. They were out to get us. This was a one-sided, horrible thing. The bottom line is they said there's no collusion with Russia. You heard so much talk about phone calls that my son made to me from this meeting that was set up by GPS Fusion, it looks like, which is the other side for those that don't know. And for a year, I heard about phone calls went to a special number, unauthorized. And it would have been my son, Don, who's a good young man, who's gone through hell. And they were calls that must have been made by him before and after the meeting, 3 calls. After massive study at work, they actually found who made the calls. One was a friend of ours, a real estate developer. Great guy, most of you know him. Nice guy, loves our country. And the other one was the head of NASCAR, 2 of them. So of the 3 calls that were so horrible that he had a meeting and he called me, and then he had the meeting after, and he made 2 more calls. And they were written about like this little lines, couple of lines. Nobody wanted to admit it. Even last night, we had a great election. I went there on Monday. We had an election for Fred Keller. It was a 50-50 shot, and he won in a landslide. We went and we did a rally. Hardly mentioned today, and yet if he lost, it would have been the biggest story in the country, even bigger than this witch hunt stuff that you guys keep writing about. So here's the bottom line. There was no collusion. There was no obstruction. We've been doing this since I've been president, and actually, the crime was committed on the other side. We'll see how that all turns out. I hope it turns out well, but to my way of thinking, and I know a lot of you agree with me, the crime was committed on the other side. This whole thing was a takedown attempt at the President of the United States. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves for the way you reported so dishonestly. Not all of you, but many of you. The way you reported. So, I've said from the beginning, right from the beginning, that you probably can't go down 2 tracks. You can go down the investigation track, and you can go down the investment track, or the track of let's get things done for the American people. I love the American people. Drug prices are coming down, first time in 51 years because of my administration, but we can get them down way lower working with the Democrats. we can solve the problem on the border in 15 minutes if the Democrats would give us a few votes. So I just wanted to let you know that I walked into the room and I told Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, I want to do infrastructure. I want to do it more than you want to do it. I'd be really good at that. That's what I do. But you know what? You can't do it under these circumstances. So get these phony investigations over with. The Wall Street Journal just wrote today, just a little while ago I saw it. Mr. Mueller wasn't obstructed in any way. This is Wall Street Journal editorial today. Mr. Mueller wasn't obstructed in any way. His copious report, 434 pages. Now they want to interview all of the same people again. They want to interview Jerry Nadler, who's been an enemy of mine for many years. He fought me in New York unsuccessfully, by the way. I've had great success against Jerry. But he was representing Manhattan, and he would fight me all the time on the West Side Railroad yards many times, very unsuccessfully. He failed. I come to Washington, I become president, and I said, oh no, I have Jerry Nadler again? So, Wall Street Journal, Mr. Mueller wasn't obstructed in any way. His copious report was released for all to see, and there was no collusion. This is the Wall Street Journal. And there was no collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign. That's it. But they want to make this a big deal. Whether or not they carry the big I word out, I can't imagine that, but they probably would because they do whatever they have to do. I'll tell you, there's a danger here. If someday a Democrat becomes president and you have a Republican House, they can impeach him for any reason, or her. Any reason. We can't allow that to happen. We can't allow it to happen. So when you look at all of the transparency, when you look at all I've done, and I will tell you, my lawyers say, you don't have to do this. You can use presidential privilege. You don't have to let your lawyers and all of your staff testify. You can use presidential privilege, sir. Would you recommend it? Well, you can be transparent or you can be tight. If you've done nothing wrong, being transparent is better. So I said, I did nothing wrong. Let's be transparent. So that's what you have, all of these things. Look at that. All of these things, 500 witnesses that I allowed to testify. It's a disgrace. So when they get everything done, I'm all set to let's get infrastructure. Let's get drug prices down. In the meantime, we're doing tremendous work without them. We're doing tremendous executive orders, a lot of work. We've had a great success, most successful economy perhaps in our country's history. We've cut regulations at a level that nobody else has cut them before. The largest tax cut in the history of the country. So we're doing a lot of work. Steve, yeah.
Does it give you any assurances that they won't, the House won't?
No, this is very sad. Because this meeting was set up a number of days ago at 11 o'clock. All of a sudden I hear last night they're going to have a meeting right before this meeting to talk about the I word. The I word. Can you imagine? I don't speak to Russians about campaigns. When I went to Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, I don't say, oh, let's call Russia. Maybe they can. It's a hoax. The greatest hoax in history. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you view Congress as a co-equal branch of government, and do you respect their power of oversight?
I respect the courts. I respect Congress. I respect right here where we're standing. But what they've done is abuse. This is investigation number 4 and the same thing. Probably 5. And it really started, I think, pretty much from the time we came down the escalator in Trump Tower. So I say to you that we're going to get everything done. We're doing a lot without them. Let them play their games. We're going to go down one track at a time. Let them finish up, and we'll be all set. Thank you, everybody.
You may have wondered what he was holding up. You can see a picture of it here on the left. This is Mueller report by the numbers, or Mueller probe by the numbers. And basically it breaks down to a cost of $35 million or more spent, 2,800 subpoenas issued, 675 days for Mueller to complete the investigation, 500 or more witnesses, and 18 angry Democrats, with the result of no collusion and no obstruction. Now let's hear Nancy Pelosi talk about the president just taking a pass. This was from ABC News. Speaker Pelosi says Democrats had hoped to give President Trump an opportunity to pass infrastructure initiative. And then, quote, for some reason, maybe it was lack of confidence on his part, he just took a pass. So here's that clip.
For some reason, maybe it was lack of confidence on his part that he really couldn't match the greatness of the challenge that we have. Wasn't really respectful of the reason of the Congress and the White House working together. He just took a pass, and it just makes me wonder why he did that. In any event, I pray for the President of the United States, and I pray for the United States of America.
Now, the Democrats have nothing. There's no collusion, no obstruction. The president has done nothing wrong. In fact, he's doing a whole lot right by getting incredible amounts of things accomplished, and the fact is, he has an approval rating of 51%. This is with polls that we know are skewed. However, the public approval rating of Congress is at 20%, and only 4% of Americans have trust in the legislative branch. So I think we have nothing to worry about, and this is coming from Charlie Kirk of Turning Point USA. More good news. President Trump was out stumping for Fred Keller from Pennsylvania, who is running for Congress. He had a landslide victory, over 70% of the vote. And the president says, thanks to the thousands who showed up for the rally last night, congratulations to Fred and his wonderful family. This is from yesterday, May 21st. Here's more progress. This is from Lindsey Graham. Very pleased to have confirmed another conservative judge to the Ninth Circuit. Daniel Collins will be an outstanding appellate court judge. He's well qualified and fully understands the difference between being a judge and a legislator. He was confirmed 53-46. So that is more good news, more of the president's agenda getting accomplished. Now, you may have noticed that in that address in the Rose Garden, the president used the term GPS Fusion. The proper name of that company that was responsible for the phony dossier is Fusion GPS. So this is the second time I've heard President Trump say it that way, GPS Fusion, backwards. I think he was trying to make a point. So this came out from Gateway Pundit, U.S. Attorney John Durham examining documents generated by interagency fusion cell set up by John Brennan in mid-2016. Here are the details. According to Department of Justice sources, John Durham will be examining documents generated by a, quote, fusion cell, which is a multi-agency team, in his investigation of Crossfire Hurricane, which is that spying scheme and plot to destroy President Trump. The fusion cell was set up by Brennan in mid-2016 in the midst of the briefings that Christopher Steele gave to English intelligence. Barr and Durham are working closely with CIA Director Gina Haspel, the Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates, and FBI Director Christopher Wray on surveillance issues related to Trump's 2016 campaign. George Papadopoulos put this tweet out today, and I think it sums things up pretty well. The president knows he and his campaign were set up by the UK and Australia, as well as a rogue FBI CIA. The UK and Australia were in on it voluntarily, not by accident. When he takes the unprecedented step to declassify the FISA materials, he will be doing it for America's honor. And I also saw several places where different lawmakers were saying that it's going to be days, not weeks, that Trump starts declassifying all this stuff. So hang on, guys, it's about to get really good. However, the Democrats are doing their best to stall. We have Don McGahn, who's a White House lawyer, being subpoenaed to testify again, Donald Jr., and now Hope Hicks, who used to be Trump's communications director. Mark Meadows writes, a question every American should ask: what on earth was the point of a taxpayer-funded special counsel if we're going to demand every witness testify again after the case is already closed? Representative Doug Collins tweeted this today. He was talking about Jerry Nadler, who is running things. He's chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and he's calling these people back to testify. And he says, I cannot emphasize this enough. The chairman's track record demonstrates he does not actually want information. He wants the fight, but not the truth. The closer he actually comes to obtaining information, the farther away he runs from it. I think that was very well said. Now, a second judge has rejected Trump's request to keep his taxes private. This is number 2 this week alone, and the Trump administration, of course, is fighting back, or it may be Trump's personal lawyers are fighting back to keep his taxes away from the Democrats. And I think he's probably just doing that because he knows that he's squeaky clean. He knows how to play the game and fight the system, and there won't be anything in his taxes, but he's just dragging it out to make these people look like the complete fools that they will appear to be at some point in the future when all of the stuff is declassified. Now let's move to the border, because this is where the real action is. This is where things need to happen, and this is what the Democrats also don't want to stop, is this continual flow up to 100,000 people a month at the border. So I want to talk about the lies that we're being told. Number 1, there's nothing wrong with open borders. Well, let's talk about this. This guy, his name is Marco Cobos, 19 years old, a Mexican national. I don't know how he got in the country, but he's here. He's homeless, living in a stolen truck. He murdered this lady, Etta Nugent, on Sunday because she wouldn't give him money to fix his broken down stolen truck. So he stole money from her. He went to buy a new battery and returned to the crime scene where he had killed her afterwards to eat. He left the next day before police were called by Nugent's son, but he came back hours later and was arrested. The prosecutor said in court that Nugent tried to escape after she was stabbed once in the chest, but he got more knives and he stabbed her again. She is a grandmother. She has 3 children and 6 grandchildren, and her husband wasn't home because he had been recovering from an illness at a nursing home. This is what we need to stop at the border. Number 2, U.S. Border Patrol intentionally allows the death of illegal immigrants. Well, this little video clip was put out by the White House, and it's a picture of Border Patrol helping this lady out of a boat with her crying child because she's trying to come into the country and she's crossing the water here. And this is what this little clip says. And this is from a Democrat, a member of Congress, accusing the Border Patrol in the death of a young migrant in their custody. This is what he said. I feel like, and the evidence is really clear, that this is intentional. It's intentional. While Congress fails to provide the desperately needed resources for law enforcement to address the crisis, this is what our Border Patrol actually does. They help people. Now, we have had 3 deaths lately of children in U.S. custody, Border Patrol custody. 2 were from the flu, and 1 had swelling in her brain and liver failure after walking through a particularly dangerous part of the Mexican desert. These people arrive and they're sick. They have been, they've got, disease, they've got the flu, they've got problems, and they die while they're in Border Patrol custody. But consider this, past several months, we've had tens of thousands of children a month, most of them traveling with a parent or an adult who's not a parent, and they've been coming to the U.S. from Mexico, getting apprehended and spending time in Border Patrol custody, and they are treated as well as they can be and sent to hospitals, and sometimes, unfortunately, these people die, but it's not Border Patrol's fault. They'll say that Republicans aren't doing enough to care for migrant children. Candace Owen, who I've talked about before, or Owens, went to a Florida detention center about 8 months ago, and she looked at the place and she said it was nicer than most U.S. preschools. Full range of activities. Adults have sand, volleyball court, Zumba classes, arts and crafts, phones, a soccer field, a basketball court, and a library. The rooms are nicer than most college dorms. There's a barber shop and a hair salon. They can get their hair cut and colored, and it's all free. So this was the center that she visited in Broward County, Florida. Obviously, we're doing a good job there. Now, number 3, sanctuaries have no legal obligation to detain murderers if they are illegal immigrants. That's a lie. Here's what happened. Prince George's County Jail Director defends herself for releasing alleged MS-13 murderers who went on to murder some more. She says a detainer is not a warrant. Here's the story. So there were 2 teens who are suspected MS-13 members. They killed a 14-year-old girl in a particularly vicious manner and dumped her body in a creek. Both had come to the U.S. from Central America. One was supposed to be deported. The other was an unaccompanied minor and had been released to a relative in D.C. They were in custody for attempted murder last year, and when ICE placed a detainer on them, asking to be notified when they would be released so agents could deport them, well, Prince George's County ignored the request and transferred them to a juvenile facility until their cases were resolved. And I don't know exactly what happened there, but apparently after they were found not guilty or whatever, they served their time, or I don't know because none of the stories explained it, but these guys walked. Now they're on the loose. They've killed this 14-year-old girl, and ICE and the police are looking for them. And here's a picture. I don't usually show these people, but since they're on the loose, and you may see them, here's what they look like. And then this girl is 14, and she was one of their accomplices. Absolutely despicable. Number 4, U.S. taxpayers have an obligation to foot the bill for their health care. Wrong again. But in California, this is what they want to do. California lawmakers are weighing proposals that would make the state the first in the nation to offer government-funded health care to adult illegal immigrants. Number 5, migrants would never use children as pawns. Well, this is a big fat lie. Donald Trump Jr. tweets this, shocked that huge numbers of people would try to game the system. No wonder why Dems don't want rapid DNA testing. So they're using these cheek swabs that can tell within 90 minutes if people are related to each other. And they find that 1/3 of migrants faked relationships with the children that they're bringing into the country. Number 6, Trump isn't building the wall. Well, the president tweeted this today. Much of the wall being built at the southern border is a complete demolition and rebuilding of old and worthless barriers with a brand new wall and footings. Problem is, the haters say that is not a new wall, but rather a renovation. Wrong, and we must build where most needed. Also, tremendous work is being done on pure renovation, fixing existing walls that are in bad condition and ineffective and bringing them to a very high standard. Remember, the guy's a builder. Representative Doug Collins tweeted this out. Judiciary Committee Democrats just voted to give green cards to immigrants with DUIs, even if those crimes seriously injured innocent people. Republicans offered an amendment to fix this problem in H.R. 2820, and not a single Democrat supported that solution because they don't want solutions. They just want open borders. Now we're going to finish up with creepy porn lawyer who is now no longer talking about his run for the presidency in 2020. So here he is, Michael Avenatti, federal grand jury in Manhattan indicted Avenatti in 2 alleged schemes, charging him with fraud and aggravated identity theft involving his former client Stormy Daniels, and with attempting to extort more than $20 million from sportswear giant Nike. This gal, Madeline Osborne, writes for the Federalist, and this is from March 28th. She writes about Avenatti, who was interviewed on broadcast and cable news networks 214 times in 2018, spanning from March to November. Presumably, the only reason the invitations eventually came to halt was his November 14th arrest for allegations of domestic abuse. Then from March to May, Avenatti was interviewed 147 times. Neither of these totals include additional segments about Avenatti where he was the subject of news but not interviewed. In 2018, CNN gave him the most airtime with 107 live interviews. MSNBC came in a close second at 81. In July and August, he began defending Central Americans who illegally crossed the U.S. border and were separated from their children in the process. Later in the fall, he represented Julie Swetnick, a woman who accused Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh of gang rape. Here he is with CNN reporter April Ryan having a really good time at the 2018 White House Correspondents' Dinner. Avenatti went on to create his own PAC and even released a platform for a potential presidential campaign, all with the encouragement of his anchor pals at CNN. They never questioned his qualifications, but described him on air as a serious candidate. And this is a quote from Brian Stelter of CNN. "And looking ahead to 2020, one reason I'm taking you seriously as a contender, Mr. Avenatti, is because of your presence on cable news." Great job reporting on that, and what a loser this guy is. Now he is a broke loser. 16 states change electoral college rules. This is from, I think his name is Daniel Ramirez. He is a cartoonist, and this was in the Daily Signal. This is what the U.S. would look like without the Electoral College. California, Texas, and New York, and Florida basically deciding who's going to be the president. According to this story in Zero Hedge, Assembly Bill 186 was passed in Nevada, which brings them into the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, an agreement which would see participating states casting their electoral votes for whoever wins the popular vote. It's not actually abolishing the Electoral College, but it renders it irrelevant by requiring electors to cast their votes for whoever receives the most votes, regardless of who actually wins in their state. So guys, they're trying really hard, but I think Donald Trump has this thing hands down in 2020, as long as things continue going as they are, and we just need to continue praying for him. So let's do that. And I want to bring some scriptures in. This is from Proverbs 25:28. "He that has no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls." And then from 1 Thessalonians 5, verses 14 through 18. "Warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient toward all men, especially those who have no rule over their own spirit. See that none render evil for evil unto any man, but ever follow that which is good both among yourselves and to all men. Rejoice evermore, pray without ceasing, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you." I think those are really good words, especially when we are faced with such insanity coming at us from every direction. And I just want to pray, Father, thank you that you give us your word, which is the Lord Jesus. And if we follow it, if we obey it, if we have rule over our spirits and we cast demonic spirits aside, we don't listen to them, we don't follow what they tell us to do, we separate our thoughts, we take our thoughts captive and decide which ones get to stay. Father, help us to stay vigilant and be diligent about casting out the evil thoughts, the fear, the anger, the bitterness, the hatred, the hopelessness that comes. Father, help us to just be faithful, to rejoice every day that Hillary Clinton is not in the White House, to pray without ceasing that our president is safe, that he stays safe, that you protect our troops, you protect our law enforcement and border patrol agents and first responders. And Father, that you help us get this country, that we help you get this country back into the shape that it needs to be in. Father, we want to see a great revival in our nation. We want to see people on their knees, recognizing that you're God and they're not. Father, help us to have a heart for the afflicted, to recognize when people are scorners and not waste any time with them, because scorners, it's impossible to bring truth to a scorner, because you get yourself a blot, as your word says. But Father, help us to keep our eyes focused on you without wavering, without whining, without complaining. We thank you for this and everything that you do for us because you love us. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, guys, that was a long prayer, but I thank you for sticking it out with me and for praying, and I give thanks to God for you. And I'll see you next time.